Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bringing AI Innovation to the Enterprise Ask the Expert session. I'm Ted Rodner with the Microsoft for Startups team, and I will be moderating today. I'm joined by Jeff Ma, who leads the global startup team. We're thrilled to have Saam Motamedi, general partner at Greylock Partners, as well as Evan Reiser, CEO and founder of AI security startup Abnormal Security. This is an Ask the Expert session. The operative word here is ask. This session is designed for you. Please ask questions. We're talking about a timely topic, AI innovation in the enterprise, beyond the buzzwords. What does that actually mean? So please ask questions, upvote questions, and we'll curate these for the panelists to tackle during the chat. Finally, so you know, the session will be recorded, and we ask that you abide by the Microsoft Code of Conduct. Please be civil, be human, and please take part in the session. With that, I'll hand it over to Jeff.
Thanks, Ted. You said the operative word was ask. I think the operative word is experts here, because we clearly have two amazing experts in this to cover this topic. For those of you guys who did not see the pre-recorded session that the three of us did with Dean, who is the CISO of Fox, we've been talking a lot about how Microsoft can help bring innovation, sort of next generation AI, into the enterprise by helping it to be easier, if that was English, helping startups make it easier, helping them to work with enterprises, because traditionally it is pretty hard for startups to work for enterprises. So Saam, as a VC partner at Greylock and someone that has worked with many startups, what are the challenges that you think that startups have in working with enterprises, specifically startups that are pushing the envelope around technologies like AI?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. It's good to be with you guys again, and it's a great question. So I'd start by saying, like, every week at Greylock, we have entrepreneurs come to our offices pitching new company concepts using AI. And I think we, as much of the world, are very excited about the potential of AI specifically to reinvent business workflows across the enterprise. That said, we don't call ourselves AI investors. We invest in companies that solve end customer problems. And if they're using AI, machine learning, data as a part of the product advantage to drive a superior solution, that's awesome, and we can get very excited about that. The challenge is many companies struggle with connecting their use of AI and technology to an actual customer problem, and then delivering a solution that can scale and solve the customer's problem with very, very high quality. And so then to your question around, like, hey, what are some of the challenges involved? I bucket them into two pieces. One is on the technology side, and the second is on the go-to-market side. So on the technology side, I think the challenge is, how do you as a new company pick a problem and then actually deliver a solution that uses real AI for that problem quickly and to customers scalably? And I think part of what goes into your decision around who to partner with, and part of why we've been excited about what you guys are working on at Microsoft and Azure, is, you know, the suite of services that you can offer startups to leverage and much more quickly get to market cutting edge AI products. So that's on the technology side. I think on the customer side, the challenge is, you know, if you think about worldwide, there's something like 20,000 companies that do north of $1 billion a year in revenue, you know, medium and large enterprises. This segment controls something like 85 to 90% of IT spend. So if you're starting a new company today, if you can target and sell into that segment, there's enough runway to actually build a really big business. Then the question is, how do you actually get into that segment, penetrate, build credibility with those customers, and partner with them? And I think that's the challenge. And again, like, part of why we're so excited about Microsoft for Startups is Microsoft and Azure have relationships with a very, very large percentage of these customers. And so if I'm running a new company and I'm trying to break into that segment of the market, being able to partner with someone like Microsoft and leverage those relationships to get my solution to market, like, that makes a world of difference.
So Evan, I'll kind of ask you a similar question from your point of view as an entrepreneur, you know, a repeat entrepreneur. What challenges have you seen selling into the enterprise as a startup, and what are the problems that like a company like Microsoft can solve for you as you try to do that?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. I think there's kind of two things, right? And I'll maybe kind of echo what Saam said around both, technology and business. I think on the technology side, building AI solutions, right, that are actually, where AI is kind of the core ingredient that makes it work, are very difficult. And so a lot of small companies that don't have 1,000-person engineering teams struggle to kind of build some of the more fundamental building blocks to kind of get their solution up and running in a way that's kind of like enterprise ready. So there's a lot of work that's involved, and we've had great success kind of building on some of the core building blocks of cloud infrastructure to help us go do that. The other kind of big problem that a lot of startups have is trying to both reach customers in a way that customers understand. So it's hard to get in front of the biggest companies in the world, and that's because there's so many startups and they're all saying things that sound very similar. And so being able to partner with someone that's really credible and use that tool to meet more customers and help understand why it's not just like some other machine learning startup. I think that's been a very powerful tool that's helped us, and I imagine will be a great approach for other entrepreneurs as well.
When you use the term enterprise ready, what does that mean to you? And again, like, how can a partner like Microsoft help you become enterprise ready? Can we, or is that something that like startups have to do on their own?
Well, I think there's two things, right? One is, this is, we're a cybersecurity company, but this probably applies to just any enterprise company. Every enterprise is extremely nervous about, and rightfully nervous about, data privacy and security. So I think making sure you're building on a really, secure and trustworthy platform like Azure, that goes a long way for customers, right? I think that the second one is, enterprises have, more complex use cases, and there's multiple users, and there's, you just need to have kind of more functionality that's really focused on solving your business problem. So the more, as a startup, right, it's hard to be, to spread yourself too thin. So if you can build on top of kind of, solutions and services that kind of get you most of the way there, things like Azure, Azure AI cognitive services, that allows your team to focus more on the specific business problems, right? So rather than having a very kind of thin solution that doesn't have the enterprisey features, if you can kind of build on top of great infrastructure, it allows your team to focus more and more on things that customers really care about.
And obviously Microsoft's current, commitment to security makes it easier for you guys to solve the specific use cases that you want to go after, where you think that your technology is well suited to do that. Saam, when you think about that term enterprise ready, what does it mean to you? Because I've heard it a couple times in the last couple days as we've talked through a lot of this stuff. And I think it is an interesting concept, the idea of a startup, which is so counter to enterprises becoming enterprise ready.
Yeah, it's an important concept, and I'd second everything Evan said. I think that was well summarized. You'd be surprised how quickly a startup can become enterprise ready if they focus on building and selling to enterprise from day one, and then they also surround themselves with partners who can enable them to do that. So when we think about enterprise readiness, we very much measure it both on product readiness and then the go-to-market maturity of the organization to actually be able to successfully acquire and service enterprise customers. So on product readiness, when you're selling to the enterprise versus, let's say, an SMB segment, there's a whole elevated set of expectations around things like quality, stability, success, and so and also integrations. And enterprises have complex IT environments, and if you want to sell into these environments, you have to cooperate with what technologies the customer is already using. And so I think, again, that's why taking advantage of services like those offered by Azure and building against those where you get scalability built in and where you get quality built in, it can just dramatically accelerate the time you get to enterprise product readiness. And I'm very optimistic. I think it's never been better to start a company oriented towards selling to the enterprise because you have all of this foundation in place to go build on top of. So that's on the product side. On the go-to-market side, look, there's a whole DNA around selling to enterprise, right? As you build out your sales, marketing team, and organization, bringing in folks who understand this type of customer's expectation and have the ability to build these relationships, sell into these relationships, and then importantly, service these relationships It's absolutely critical. And so both of those things have to be in place before you can sort of successfully and repeatably sell into the enterprise.
And Jeff, if I could just kind of add one more thing, I just want to kind of highlight the point that Saam made, where if you kind of plan for that from day one as a startup, you can do it very quickly. And I say this with humility, but like our first Fortune 500 customer, we signed 9 months after we started the company. And the only reason we were able to do that is for kind of two reasons. One is we knew that's where we wanted to go, so we were able to invest in all the things that Saam talked about: security, privacy, scalability, all from day one, right, including customer success. The other thing, which is more on the technology side, right? And I saw a question come in about, how long does it take to deploy a abnormal solution? Well, the other thing to get to, enterprise quickly is you need to build on a platform that allows you to integrate quickly and for customers to see value quickly. And that's particularly important for the enterprise segment. And so, because we built our product on top of the Microsoft platform, our customers are able to integrate in one click all through Microsoft APIs. We're able to go back retrospectively and then show value to that customer within 7 days. So because we're taking advantage of all these kind of cloud native tools, right? Both Microsoft Graph APIs and Azure, that allows us to deploy the product quickly. The customer can see value quickly, and that helps accelerate the kind of these enterprise sales cycles. And that's something that just wasn't possible 5 years ago. And so I think a lot of entrepreneurs are scared about selling to the enterprise because it sounds long, complex, and maybe they're not ready. But I would love to just assure other companies, and I think we're an example, like if you focus on that and you take advantage of some of these great enterprise-ready technologies, there's no reason you can't sell, you can't land a Fortune 500 customer in your first year being in business.
So Evan, when you talk about planning for that, right? Clearly there must have been like a customer discovery process that you went through. What kind of customer discovery process did you go through to understand what are the bells and whistles that you needed to sell into the enterprise? I think, when I think of customer discovery, I think about, you go to Starbucks and you interview like 5 people or whatever, and that you do the traditional like Clayton Christensen kind of thing of asking a bunch of uncomfortable questions to someone. Did you guys go through that with enterprise type customers, or how, because I would assume that that's hard, because to get the CTO of Walmart or something to talk to you about what they're doing and what they need probably sounds much more difficult than to get some Joe Schmo from the creamery in San Francisco.
Yeah. So I mean, the short answer is like yes, we took that approach, and we talked to, I think we probably talked to over 50 customers before we even wrote a line of code, right? So we've always been very, very customer focused. It is very difficult, right? Because there's 5,000 startups that also wants to talk to the the CTO of Walmart, and so that, I think that is a big challenge for enterprise startups. I think every startup will benefit from the more time they can spend with customers, the more they can understand their problems and pains. That's going to help guide their product development and their company building to build an enterprise solution. I think that is a big challenge for startups, right? And I think that if I go start another company in the future, I think probably one of the most important decisions I want to be thinking about is, hey, what is my plan to get in front of those top 2,000 enterprise companies? And I think one of the even when you think about cloud infrastructure, right? One of the benefits of using a platform like Azure, it's not just a bunch of technology services. That some of the things I've been really happy with working with Microsoft is some of the business benefits, right? So the ability to ability for customers to purchase our solution directly from Microsoft to the Azure marketplace, the ability to have this like Azure co-sell program so that we can go meet these customers together and kind of learn what the problems are. I think those are some of the important important ingredients, right, that help enterprise founders build better products that are more effective for their customers.
Yeah, and that's the reason I asked about the customer discovery process. It's one thing we're thinking about doing in Microsoft for Startups is because we have such great access to these incredible enterprise customers. Can we leverage them to help you get to your first MVP by allowing you to get access to them where we vet the people they talk to, so they don't have to talk to 2,000 startups. They can spend time with the right ones that are part of the Microsoft for Startups program. Ted, did you have questions that have come in through the session?
Indeed, I do. We have a question for you, Jeff.
Okay.
We have a question. All of the major cloud vendors have startup programs. What are the top reasons to partner with Microsoft versus the other guys?
Wait, there are other cloud vendors? I didn't know that. Yeah, no, that's obviously true. I mean, our competitors all have programs that tend to center around credits. And, you know, ultimately, I think of credits very much like airline miles. It shouldn't be the reason that you choose to fly an airline, and it probably isn't in the long term. So what we're trying to do at Microsoft for startups is become much more than a credit program. Specifically right now, where we know we can provide tremendous value, and you've kind of heard this expression over and over again, is helping startups go to market and helping startups sell into the enterprise and helping startups get more customers in the B2B or business to enterprise state. So we have very scalable programs where companies like Abnormal can come in and co-sell with us, meaning we have 40,000 salespeople that will sell Evan's product and will be able to retire quota against it. Abnormal is able to publish in our marketplace, which allows our customers to transact directly with them through Microsoft, meaning they can avoid procurement and they can do their deals on Microsoft Paper. We also have great resellers who are partners of us that can resell Abnormal solution to the many people. Like the CIOs still often buy through resellers. So having a reseller in place that's trusted, that vets solutions, is very helpful for startups. And Microsoft obviously has these great relationships already with resellers. So it just eases one friction point for startups to work with us. We will be moving more and more into earlier points of the life cycle for startups, meaning helping startups achieve their minimal viable product quicker or get to product market fit quicker. All these different sort of buzzword expressions that are important in the stages of a startup. But right now, our focus really is around this idea of business acceleration, because it's where we know we can provide tremendous value to startups. And as we've seen with some of the early startups that we've been working with, Abnormal is an example, Observe.ai is another example. We've been able to really accelerate business growth.
Yeah, and just one quick thing to add on to that, Jeff, like, when I go talk to like a Fortune 500 CIO, right, and he or she says, well, why should I, pick you guys? There's lots of good technology and product reasons, right? But if I can go and say, well, part of the reason is because you can call up your, Microsoft sales rep, you can learn more about the product, you can buy directly from Microsoft. Oh, and by the way, if you do, you'll get Azure, Azure consumption credits, which help you, reduce your commitment. That's actually very meaningful to a lot of enterprises. That's not going to be the only thing, right? Ultimately, you need to solve customer problems, have a great product they love, but that is a differentiator that does matter a lot of the time.
Great.
And we've got another question. This one is for you, Saam. Someone asks, how has the role of VCs in working with startups and companies like Microsoft? So I guess this sort of triangle, VCs interacting with corporates.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, when we invest and partner with a company like we have with Evan and Abnormal, we get very involved, and we want to help them build the largest possible company. And so, a lot of these decisions are actually made at a board level. So, for example, and Evan, you can speak to this much better than I can, but as we're having this conversation, I'm reminded of many board conversations we had, some number of quarters ago around what should the cloud platform partner for Abnormal be, if you take a very long-term view. And for a modern SaaS software company, a decision like that is a very important decision. And so I think now that, Microsoft in specific has been able to differentiate against some of the other cloud providers, there's more conversation happening at the boardroom and with investors having a perspective as well around what are the dimensions to consider in this decision and what's the right decision for a company to make, right? And so I think that is one primary way it's changed. And fundamentally, as an investor, like, we want to help the company do what's going to help it deliver the best product to as many customers as quickly as possible. And I'd say from my perspective, just to also tie this to the last question that was asked, Jeff, you talked about credits, and on the technology side, I think the clouds differentiate from one another and have different pros and cons. To me, like, the thing that when Evan raised this internally at Abnormal that we were sort of blown away by, and I do think is very new and differentiated, is everything happening on the go-to-market side. And I'd say, like, as an investor and board member, the ability to have a company accelerate its go-to-market into large enterprise by leveraging their cloud partner, I've never seen that, and that can be sort of completely game-changing for a business. particularly in early business that's trying to build credibility and connectivity into the enterprise as quickly as possible.
And this is a follow-on, Saam. Can you talk about the process that you went through at Greylock when you decided to invest in Abnormal Security?
Yeah, absolutely, and it was very much a mutual decision to sort of partner together. But fundamentally at Greylock, we've been investing in for 55 years, and over the last 15 to 20 years, really focused on enterprise and consumer software. And we make very, very few investments per year. And we are looking for companies that not only have a chance to grow revenues and scale and go public, but actually become enduring franchises. And a decade from now, be the leading public independent companies in markets that are relevant and growing. And the reality is there are very, very few companies that actually have a chance of pulling that off. And so when we make investment decisions like we did with Evan and Abnormal, at the early stages, we're really looking at 3 dimensions. One is the quality of the founding team. The second is the market opportunity. And the third is the team's ability to deliver a long-term differentiated product, into that market. And so in this case, I won't flatter Evan too much, but we had the privilege of, Evan, Sanjay, and the team they've built at Abnormal is one of the absolute top teams that at the intersection of machine learning and enterprise software. And they had previously built and sold companies and then scaled larger public companies' machine learning platforms. And the skill set, and going back to Jeff's question on enterprise readiness, the familiarity on how to build these systems for enterprise readiness, that is extremely scarce. And so we were really excited about working with them. And then they intersected that with a market opportunity that we think is pretty phenomenal, where all of us now, working from our homes, all communication is digital. Email is the most important vector of that digital communication, and the integrity and security of that communication is more important than it's ever been. And if you think about, you take a step back and you ask, hey, what's happened over the last 15 years in email and digital communication security broadly, really, in my view, 2 things have happened. One is enterprises are moving to the cloud and primarily moving to Office 365. And then the second is, attackers have gotten more sophisticated and have shifted their focus from, let's say, more basic spam and phishing attacks to much more advanced business email fraud and spear phishing. And so I think Evan and Sanjay's thesis, only, a little over 2 years ago was, hey, can we reimagine this market built for the cloud, built for, Office 365, natively leveraging the APIs that we can use to deliver the solution, and then can we differentiate by using cutting edge machine learning techniques to actually solve these much more advanced attacks. And if we do that, can we become the market leader in email security? And so the combination of that, the team, and then our confidence that the team would deliver a superior product actually made it a very easy decision. But that's what went into it.
Saam, can I add one more thing too, just because I think it'd be relevant for other entrepreneurs. I think another big thing had nothing to do with us or Greylock, right? But it's just the general kind of shift to the cloud. So as probably many of you guys know, the grand majority of enterprises have gone and deployed, Microsoft 365. And so if you think about our industry, right, email security, 10 years ago, you had to buy this box, you had to put it in your closet, you had to hook it up with, in your mail flow. And now, right, we're able to go deploy a product all through Microsoft APIs. A customer can one click and deploy an Azure application behind the scenes, and then get 90 days worth of results in a couple hours, right? So a lot of opportunities now for enterprise, especially those that are leveraging AI, it's easier than it's ever been in the history of civilization to go deploy a high scale AI application, right? Very quickly for enterprises with relatively little work, right? Probably 100x less work than would require 10 years ago, because of these amazing platforms that enable us. And sorry to connect the dots, and I think that applies to lots of other markets, right? And I'm sure that maybe even broadly for just IT in general, there's lots of applications that they were only so good because they were on premise 10 years ago, and now, especially with some of the Microsoft platforms, whether it's Microsoft 365 or Dynamics 365 or Azure, it's going to enable a whole new class of applications. And there's probably dozens of billion-dollar companies that will be created on that platform, right? And hopefully entrepreneurs are going to go figure out how to solve these problems and build those companies.
Great, Evan. To follow that, I have a two-parter for you. The first question is abnormal security available across industries?
Yeah, short answer, yep. Everyone uses email. Everyone has email security issues, and we don't discriminate.
Perfect. And then this is sort of Matthew asks a question. Dealing with security problems with AI is tricky since there are classes of problems that are targeting a system in a way that was not in the mind of the designers, i.e. an exploit. Can your AI deal with such unexpected problems or develop specifically what is the exploit versus some flux in it that is abnormally or anything with outside of defined metrics? Can your AI deal with concepts instead of metrics?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a really great question, and this has been a struggle, in cybersecurity for a long time. A lot of cybersecurity technologies are generally, like, think about antivirus or even anti-spam. Those systems are built to recognize bad things, like memorize those bad things, and then try to like see that when they come in again, they recognize them, like stop them. And so that's historically been a very effective approach for dealing with these different issues. And AI is very good at pattern recognition and memorization. The challenge that we see with a lot of modern day cybersecurity attacks, and there's countless examples, right, that you guys may see in the news, is the very successful ones are very targeted and very personalized, right? And they take advantage of these exploits, right, where it's not something that's been seen before. And so, as you guys know, it's hard to build software that anticipates these unknown things. And so the approach that we take, and this is probably generalizable to many different products, many different industries, is rather than trying to like memorize all the bad stuff we know about, we try to actually understand, well, what does normal behavior look like, and how do organizations normally act, right? So when Ted and Jeff share an email with each other, what's that normal conversation? When you make a payment to your bank, what is the normal way you do that? And so we don't actually know the new attack that no one's seen before, but we can begin to understand and memorize how do businesses work and how do people do things, and we can detect anomalies against that. So the core of our technology was understand the normal behavior and looking for these abnormal events that are likely to be attacks. So the short answer is like no, like we can't predict what the next exploit is going to be, but we can tell you when something very strange happens that's very likely to be an exploit, and that's the basis for how our approach to email security.
Great. Again, we've got a lot of questions specifically for you, Evan. Someone asked, is there a particular cloud service that you have your eye on that in the Microsoft cloud that you think will help you take your solution to the next level?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple, and some of the new things that we saw yesterday were quite impressive, although they're not all related. I think the ones that I'm personally most excited by, and I'm not the expert at our company on this. I think some of the cognitive services are very interesting. I think specifically around natural language processing and computer vision. And so, in the last question, part of the question was, hey, can the system understand the difference between like metrics and concepts? And so by applying more of these like human perception technologies, right, such as computer vision, I think that'll allow these machine learning systems to get smarter, right, and make better judgments on behalf of security and IT teams. And that is kind of like the premise of AI, right? Suck up all this data and make like smart judgments, right, to kind of save people, to basically do work for people. And so I think I'm particularly excited about just like the direction that those products are going, right? And so I'd love to see see what else we can do with some of those those kind of new services. Just to give it a concrete example, right? The ability, like things like form identification, that's actually very important, right? If you're trying to detect a fake invoice or a fraudulent invoice, being able to understand, hey, here's a form, let me pull out the different components. Oh, this thing here is not just black pixels. That's actually a routing number, and that routing number looks nothing like anything we've seen before. I think more and more of these cognitive services will allow AI companies to up-level kind of the sophistication of how these systems are making decisions, And I think generally that's going to power a bunch of new AI applications for enterprises.
That's great. And I think we have time for one more question. Jeff, this is coming your way. There's a question: how do you evaluate companies for the Microsoft for Startups program? What sort of companies, startups are you looking to work with?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now and I think generally we'll always look for startups that we really feel like we can help. Startups that align with the industries that we believe we have, incredible value in, things like healthcare and life science, manufacturing, retail, financial services. We're interested in working with open source companies also because we believe that there's just tremendous value in nurturing those types of companies. And ultimately, we're looking for companies that are selling into the businesses or really selling into the enterprise, because again, that's where we think our value proposition aligns with what they really need. So ultimately, we also want companies that we think have a chance to become very successful. Just like investors, we have limited resources from our team. It's a smaller team than some of our competitors, and ultimately we want to make sure that we allocate our resources towards the companies that we think have the greatest chance of success. So ultimately, we believe like, hey, let's focus on companies right now where they're well aligned with what Microsoft does well, and they're well positioned in the life stage where we can help them. Eventually, we'd like to obviously help every company out there and help every entrepreneur. That's our goal. That's Microsoft and Satya's goal, is to empower everyone to do more. But where we're going to focus right now is around where we think we can help the most.
Great. I think that's time. I'd like to thank everybody for participating. I'd like to thank you guys for taking part. And with that, we'll say goodbye.